Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is Child Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and it's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Monday night, August the 22nd, 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. Thanks very much for being here. I appreciate everybody who's tuning in live and everybody who's catching all my archives. Every time I see how many people are listening to my shows, it just, it just humbles me because, I know people's time is precious. Time is precious, and for people to take the time out of their day, to take the time to listen to my shows, because I really appreciate it, because I know there's so many shows here on Blog Talk Radio that I want to listen to, and I just don't have time. But my time is sort of freed up a little bit now because I'm no longer with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and just resigned last week. And I wish them all the best. It was a great experience. It was a great couple of years to be able to advocate with some people, like-minded people who really want to stop child abuse. And so I will always support their mission, and I will always support what they're doing. And I think that they're awesome people. And I just, for personal reasons, I'm moving on. But their mission is just amazing. And so I hope you will all continue to support Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And we're all advocates. We're all on the same team. And we all may move on at certain times, but that doesn't mean that we're not fighting for the same cause, and that's to stop and prevent child abuse, right? This is a huge issue, and we can't talk about this enough. We cannot get enough information out to people. We need 24/7 news service. We need 24/7 television, talking about this stuff, because this is a huge issue. Nobody deserves to be abused. No man or woman, no child. I mean, this is ridiculous. And we, people that stand up and speak out against abuse, really, of any type, doesn't matter whether it's, domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault, whatever it is, human rights abuses, people who stand up against it, are really calling for change. We're really calling for change. We're saying, hey, why do we have to continue this? Why do we have to, as this human species on this planet, continue to hurt each other when it's totally needless and it's completely unacceptable? But it's been going on since time began, and it will continue to, because people's hearts are in the wrong place. That's all there is to it. Child abuse prevention is completely preventable. Like child abuse is preventable, 100%. The reason why that it continues is because people are not making the right decisions on behalf of their children for whatever reason, or another child, right? And so children are getting hurt, right? And so child abuse is 100% preventable. And it's really sad that people make the wrong choices when it comes to children, and that's why I'm speaking out. I just, I want it to be one more voice. So I appreciate everybody who's tuning in to my shows. I just appreciate it. I thank you so much for doing that. And this is really also my healing journey. It's a big part of why I'm where I am at today in my healing journey that I've been on for 4.5 years. Because I've been able to say what I need to say, get it out, and it makes me feel good to advocate on behalf of children right now who are being abused, right? So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. You have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows, because I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject, right? You have to know what's good for you to listen to, make the right choice for yourself. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. Like, have an adult listen to the show with you, and that way they can help you decide whether you should be listening or not, because my shows are all about abuse. I don't sugarcoat it. I just tell it like it is. And so young people, these shows are definitely not for younger children, right? And so, I'm all about protecting children, right? This is exactly why I'm doing this. I wouldn't be doing this in my free time. I'm paying to do these shows if I didn't care about children, right? So the issue is that so many children out here need our help. They need everything that we can do for them, because obviously the people that are supposed to be helping them, the people that are supposed to be loving them, caring for them, meeting their needs, are not doing it, right? And it's really sad that society just says, oh, well, not my problem, not my child, not my kid. That's really a sad attitude, and that's the attitude of a lot of people. Then you have other people out here saying, man, I wish I could take them all home and take care of them, you know what I mean? Because there's people out here with really good hearts that really do care. And I think a lot of times it just hurts to care. People have a hard time caring about these issues because it hurts to care. The minute you start caring, you start feeling like, oh, this is horrible. Like, look at these headlines. Look at what's going on. Look what's happening to these children. They're being beaten. They're being burned. They're being killed. They're being, abused. They're being sexually abused. Like, look what's happening to these children. And all of a sudden, when you start to really look, what does it do to your heart? Well, it breaks your heart, And so many people just cannot, for whatever reason, put themselves in that position because they just don't. They're either just really cold-hearted and they don't care for real, or they don't want to see it because it's just too painful. And so I was abused as a child. I had to live with this my whole life, like I've had to live with the aftermath of it, and a lot of a lot of damage, not only to my body but also to my mind and to my spirit, to my soul, to my very being, right? So I've been forced to deal with this my whole life. So, so I don't mind doing this work, and I don't mind talking about this stuff. And I've got my good friend Lone Star Twin here. Hello, Lone Star Twin. It's nice to see you. And always my sister. And so, I don't mind talking about this stuff. But, so many people do have a hard time even thinking about child abuse. It's just, if they weren't abused as children, it's so painful to look at. It's so painful to see these headlines out here of these children who are being abused and who are losing their lives because of the abuse, and who are being killed, outright killed and murdered, right? It's absolutely horrific. And then these children that are in the hospital due to the abuse-related injuries. And this is what we really need to do. All of us need to work in whatever way we can, whatever capacity we can to, to stop child abuse, right? So I would say education is really the issue. Become educated, learn the signs and symptoms, learn how to report it, then learn to report it. If you know of a child who's being abused, you do the right thing. You report it. If you suspect abuse, then you do the right thing. Because a call in good faith, like my friend always says here, a call in good faith is just that. It's a call in good faith. No harm, no foul, right? No abuse, the child will not be removed from the home. And half the time, children are being abused and they're left in the home anyway. That was my case. And so, but the whole issue is that, if we can get help for parents who are struggling, parents who a child might be just really struggling within the home because the parents are struggling, and parents aren't really meaning to hurt their children, but if they just had the resources, if they just had the support, if they just had enough, of everything that they needed, that child would have everything that they needed, right? A lot of times, a lot of abuse is because of that. I want people to know that. So I'm looking at an article from emedicinehealth.com, and this is part of my studies right now that I'm doing a course on child abuse prevention and intervention and whatnot. And this website was brought to my attention, and there's some really good information on here from emedicinehealth.com. And so that's what I'm looking at here tonight, looking at forms of child abuse. And I've been talking about child sexual abuse now for the last month or two, probably the last 2 months. And that's just because that's what I'm dealing with in my own healing journey, right? And so I think it's very important that we do talk about child sexual abuse. It's very much hushed up. It's very much, we don't want to talk about that. It's a taboo subject. It's a taboo topic. It's certainly not something people want to discuss on their lunch breaks, children being raped and sodomized and abused, sexually molested and whatever. Nobody wants to think about that, But these poor kids out here, these poor children, boys and girls out here who are being abused sexually, they don't want to think about it either, but they're being forced to deal with it because someone is abusing them, right? And so I think that we owe them a few minutes of our time to think about the situation that they're in and then learn the signs and symptoms. Child sexual abuse is not always so noticeable, It's not always, the signs and symptoms are not always there, and it depends on the situation, Sometimes, I think behaviorally, you might see a lot of signs. If you know a child, and they used to be outgoing and they used to be just fun-loving, and then all of a sudden, just overnight, boom, they're withdrawn, sitting by themselves. They don't want anybody touching them. They might have problems even just communicating with you. They look distressed. Maybe they're not eating properly or sleeping properly. You might notice some behavioral signs. You might notice some physical signs. They might not be able to sit down properly. That's an issue. I hope people realize that. If a child's having a hard time walking or sitting down, something's wrong. You know what I mean? And a lot of times people just think, I don't know what's the matter with that kid. But if it's your own child and you notice that your child's having a hard time sitting down, there's something wrong, right? This is some huge issues, right? Child sexual abuse is a huge issue, and I don't mind talking about it. And we all need to know about this. We all need to know that it happens, first of all, that it's going to continue to happen until we can educate the public that child sexual abuse is wrong, it's against the law, it's a crime, right? It's a criminal offense against children. And yet there's so many people out here who think it's okay. You know what I mean? I'm talking about adults who make the decision to use children sexually. This is incredibly wrong. Now, there's been cases of adolescents using children sexually because adolescents do that, and many times it's what they learned, it's what they were shown how to do. They were abused themselves, and so there you go. We got to stop the cycle, right? We have to stop the cycle of child sexual abuse. We have to stop the cycle of abuse, period, right? So forms of child abuse, the first one they talk about is child sexual abuse, and they say includes any activity that uses a child to create sexual gratification, either in you or in others. So although the touching of children as a sign of affection and for hygiene is considered normal and necessary, there is a way to distinguish normal touching from child sexual abuse. And the key is the intention by the perpetrator to be sexually aroused by the activity, or the intention to create sexual arousal in others. So the intent is to use children in any way to create sexual arousal is illegal. And this is criminal behavior that is aggressively prosecuted and severely punished by our legal system. Thank God. Like I really thank God, because this is the issue. Children have been sexually abused since time began, but now we have laws that say, hey, it's wrong. Hello. That's why I'm so happy. I love it. I just absolutely love bringing attention to the fact that it's a crime. Hello. And yet, we have people down in the States. I don't know about Canada. I'm up in Canada, but I go down in the States. There was a whole group of people, pedophiles and whatnot, they'd have to be, advocating for adult-child sexual relationships. Actually lobbying the government. There was actual lobbying, bills were trying to be passed through that would allow adult-child sexual relations. This is the real truth. This is absolutely sick and twisted, right? I mean, no, it's all wrong. I'll continue to speak out against it. I really don't care. I'm not popular anyway, and it doesn't bother me to be on the wrong side of the public opinion. I just think that it's so wrong. You know what I mean? And I can tell you what it did to me at the age of 8 years old to have my 21-year-old brother sexually abuse me. This is absolutely wrong, right? And yet there's so many people out here who think it's just fine. You know what I mean? And it's a crime, and I hope they bust every single one of them, right? So that's my take on it. It's so wrong. They said child sexual abuse can include a wide variety of activities. Some are obvious acts of sexual abuse. Others must be evaluated to determine if they're designed to create sexual gratification. For instance, we're talking activities can include anything. Any adult sexual activity with a child, including touching, fondling, right, intention of arousing sexual feelings. But photography, videotaping, filming of children with the intent to create sexual stimulation is a form of child abuse as well. They say other forms of child sexual abuse include exposure of a child to erotic material in the form of either live behavior, photographs, film, video, right, things like this. Any efforts to seduce a minor into a sexual relationship, whether the act is accomplished or not, will likewise be considered a form of child sexual abuse and will result in severe legal consequences. So inappropriate intimacy with children will also be regarded as child sexual abuse. So they said, take care around children at all times to prevent activities that might be construed as sexual abuse. They said, if reasonable care is taken, displays of affection or inadvertent incidents that result in exposure of a child to a sexual act or sexual material, for instance, like a child walking into a closed bedroom while the parents are having sex or finding an adult magazine, is not considered criminal, right? But they said that, I think what it is there has to be, parents need to realize, parents and caregivers, that there is an issue with one child, one adult situations, and you do have to be very careful. And you also have to be careful with the older adolescents in the home, older children who are watching younger children. That's also an issue. One adult or one older adolescent and one child situation should be definitely watched, and you have to be really sure that because this is happening, right? We know the stats and we know what they are. The facts are what the facts are. Based on the reports from federal studies, and they're actually, it's underreported. We all know that child sexual abuse is underreported. Child abuse, period, is underreported. But child sexual abuse, 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 in 6 to 7 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. Now, that was a stat a while back. Now they changed it, and they're saying 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 4 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. And so this is a newer stat, and this is absolutely unacceptable. So that means, if you know me, then you know one person who's been sexually abused under the age of 18. And I'm just one, and I know so many people personally. I knew so many people growing up who were sexually abused as children. I grew up with them. That really, I knew more people who were abused and sexually abused than I knew who weren't. Now, this is a sad situation, and this is the truth, it's really, really quite sad to see what's actually happening out there, and that the whole society and the world just likes to close a blind eye to it because they think, well, what can we do about it? It's never going to change. I hear this attitude all the time. I hear that all the time because of what I do, right? And it's I'm just like, well, okay, then if we can't stop, how about, since we haven't found the cure for cancer yet, let's just give up, forget about the people with cancer. Who cares, just let them die. We'll never change it. If that's the attitude we're going to have, let's all just sit down and forget about it. You know what I mean? Like, no, I believe that they can find a cure for cancer, and I believe we can stop child abuse. And so, call me a fool. I don't care. Education is the key, right? And it's really quite sad. I mean, my own parents, like anybody who's interested in hearing about my story, I do that on One Child Abuse Survivor to Another in the morning. That's my personal journey. That's my personal story. And, the issues are what they are. There's so many people out here who abuse children, and they don't care. They don't care that they hurt that child. They don't care that they hurt anybody. They just have a heart full of hurtful stuff, And so the children pay the price, and everybody else around them pays the price. There's so many evil, kind of twisted people out here who just think that they should be allowed to do whatever they want to people, and it's wrong. And I don't mind standing up and saying it's wrong. I didn't mind standing up and saying it was wrong as a child either. It used to catch me a lot of beatings, but I didn't care. I was like, what, this is all wrong, and it's always been wrong, and it will never be right, So why other people can't figure that out, I don't know, but it's very strange. So they said that to identify the physical signs of child sexual abuse, parents should know the normal appearance of the genitalia of their child so that they can identify if any changes occur. If a child complains about problems, with their genitals or just any kind of issues like that, because I went to my mother when I was being sexually abused by my brother. I had been threatened with sodomy because he had already sodomized me, and I was like, oh my God, I can't take that again. So I actually didn't tell her for a while. But it kept going on, and I was very sick. I had an infection, and I was bleeding, and it was horrible. It went on for months, I finally told my mother, and my mother said, you want to know what my mother said to me? Right? She said, that's not my problem. That's your problem. You deal with it. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to deal with it? And I was 8 years old. She's like, just wrap yourself up like a mummy when you go to bed. Right? That was my mother's answer to my 21-year-old brother raping me. And the issue is that my mother was being sexually abused by my dad. So she was being raped by my dad. I think my mother hated me, and she kind of figured, oh well, I'm being sexually abused, so are you? Who cares, right? That was my mother's attitude. She was very, very ill and very sick and very abusive. So this is the issue. So many people will just allow their children to be sexually abused by someone in the home. Be very careful. Do not do that. You do the right thing, and you get the child some help. And who cares if it's grandma or grandpa? Who cares if it's aunt or uncle or brother or whoever? You get that child some help, right? You do not allow a child to be abused, right? It's the changes in behavior, including discipline problems, fecal soiling, bedwetting, insomnia, nightmares, depression, or other changes in the way a child normally acts can be signs of sexual abuse. Excuse me. This is just the issue. I mean, there are signs, but a lot of times people are not paying attention, right? Parents should discuss the possible reasons for such changes in behaviors with professionals who are in a position to do proper evaluations of the behavioral changes. Talk to someone like many doctor. There's many specialists out there. Maybe not in every town and every place, in every city, right? But there are certain individuals who are actually trained to be able to spot child sexual abuse, right? And you want to get a hold of somebody who's a professional who deals with that stuff, right? Now, they talk about pedophilia. They say a form of child sexual abuse is an abnormal interest in children that is based on the intention by the perpetrator to be sexually aroused by children. So someone with an erotic interest in children may collect material that showcases a child in sexual poses. The person may seek interaction with children with the intention of satisfying an erotic or sexual desire or actively seek a sexual relationship with a child. So these non-sexual forms of interaction, even if well-intentioned, can be construed as sexual. So adults who seek actual physical sexual relations with children are the most extreme and deviant of the pedophiles. And so they go on to talk a lot about pedophilia here. And then they also talk about physical abuse. This is just sort of an overview on all the different types of child abuse. And I had, someone tell me actually not too long, earlier this summer, actually said, how come, what's the big deal about CSA, child sexual abuse, right? And that's why I've been talking about child sexual abuse for the last, 2-3 months, because, this is what I'm dealing with in my healing journey. So I thought, hey, I'm working with this right now. I'm working on my own healing journey, so I'll just talk about it, right? Because this needs to be talked about, right? And this guy tells me, what's the big deal about CSA, child sexual abuse. And because I had written an article, it was a 15-minute challenge for people to think about what a child would go through in a 15-minute period of being abused, right? You can kill a child in 15 minutes, you know what I mean? Like 15 minutes is all it took for my brother to rape and sodomize me, bound and gagged, sodomize me, rape me. And in 15 minutes he stole everything from me. You know what I mean? And so I also put in the article, I said, a child who's being abused physically, verbally, emotionally, psychologically, or sexually, like all the different forms of child abuse or neglect even. Think about what that child's going through in a 15-minute period that they can take their life. And if it doesn't kill them, it could seriously injure them. And no child can take that. They just can't. So it was a 15-minute challenge to think about that, for people to think about that. You know what I mean? Like 15 minutes doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but to a child who's suffering, to a child who's being abused and beaten or battered or kicked around or yelled at, screamed at, and verbally abused and verbally assaulted, right? Emotionally, psychologically assaulted. 15 minutes to that child means everything. It's the difference between life and death for many children. And so that was my little thing to sort of point out it on one of the social networks. And this one guy writes, so what's the big deal about CSA anyway? And I'm like, okay, either you're somebody who's either sexually used a child, or you're just cold-hearted and cold-blooded and you can just go away. And I thought, there you go. Now I have to talk about it, because this person actually proved to me that people don't care about people using children sexually. This makes me sick to my stomach. And I will continue to speak out against this stuff and to stand up for child rights and child protection and everything else, and I'm just going to be one of these people out here that people don't like to hear from. You know what I mean? I've never been popular in my lifetime, so I don't expect to be popular now. And, especially this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I've been rejected my whole life, so I can take it. You know what I mean? Reject me all you want, but I'm going to keep on talking. See, that's my fight, right? I really don't care. You know what I mean? I'm out here to try to protect children. I'm not out here to make friends. I have, however, made some of the most awesome, amazing friends. You know what I mean? I have some of them here sitting with me in the chat room here tonight. I got Chris and Lone Star Twin here with me tonight. And these are two of my really good friends. Consider them my family. And so, the thing is it's not a popular thing to do to try to protect children, right? It's just not, and people don't want to hear from us. People don't want to hear from me, that's for sure. But you know what? We have to keep talking. We have to keep doing this. You know why? Because if we don't, it all gets shoved back under the carpet. It all gets locked back behind those doors, and the window shades come down, and then, and then it's just fair game, right? We have to play on people's consciences, and we have to play on society's conscience, not just individuals, but society as a whole. How we perceive children, how we feel about children. There's still so many people out here who think children should just be heard and children should just be seen and not heard. And they shouldn't even be seen. A lot of these people just lock their kids away in the closet and starve them to death. And a lot of these people will put their children or other people's children out in dog cages out in the backyard for years. A lot of these people will put their kids down in the basement and beat them and leave them down there to starve. We know this stuff is going on. We know it is. And, and how many children are they going to find in the next year? How many children's lives are going to be lost? Right, we have to keep talking about this because these children can't wait, and that's why I really, I'm a big proponent for just raising your voice. Everybody involved, do whatever you can in your own time. I do all this in my free time. I do this I pay for my own shows here on Blog Talk Radio. I can't even afford it. I'm like $30,000 in debt. I'll never see the end of that. And really, I have no job. Right, but I pay for these blog talk shows because I'm like, I don't care. Kids to me matter. You know what I mean? There's other stuff that's really, it'll come along. But these children's lives, man, they matter. So I'm willing to spend the time to do this. But not everybody's got this much time to do what I do, right? And that's totally cool because I totally understand. Now I don't have children because I was raped and sodomized as a child, and my whole reproductive system was screwed. So there you go. There you go. I couldn't afford to adopt, and I wouldn't have been able to anyway. I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. So the issue is I don't have any children. But you know what? I'm willing to stand up and speak out for these children out here tonight because I know that these kids out here tonight, there's going to be children all across North America, all across U.S. and Canada, all across the world, worldwide, children suffering, being beaten and burned and just mistreated in every way, and not treated with dignity, not treated with respect. And there won't be any help for them. are raped and abused and sodomized and misused every way, and there will be no help for them. No, and there will be people around that will know what's happening, but they won't get that child some help. And the situation with my home, we had social workers in my home, and the issue when I was really little, and my older siblings and stuff, they all had to go to court with my parents, and it was a big issue because my parents were both brought up on charges, like both my parents were, and we grew up like that. We grew up in this hell. So it wasn't like we were even looking for help. Even the social services people didn't help us. And then after they were around for a while, and then things were semi-okay while they were around. And then they left, and they didn't come back, and then it all started again. And so this is what we know about child abuse. It's not going away, and people are continually and going to continue to abuse their children. I really think we need to reach the younger generations. I really do. And I just think it's so important that, we reach these younger kids out here, elementary school, right, all the way starting really young, because many of them are not seeing good examples in their home. They're seeing their moms being beaten. They're seeing their moms beating on their dads. They're seeing, they're seeing their parents fighting. They're seeing a lot of violence on TV. They're not being, brought up properly. They're just being brought up to enjoy violence, right? And people who enjoy violence don't mind killing their children, right? It's just sort of the thing to do. And people who enjoy violence don't mind going to prison for a few years and then coming out and doing the same thing to another child, right? There's a whole lot of sick people in this world, and it's a sick world, obviously. And so, we really need to, this has to be done on a nationwide level, and I'm a big pusher for, a big proponent, big pusher for education nationwide. I'd like to see it go worldwide. That's why I'm working kind of internationally too. But I also volunteer with a lot of groups. I wasn't just volunteering with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I volunteer with Canadian International Learning Foundation, the ILF, and they do a lot of great work in Afghanistan and Uganda. And I also volunteer with the Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan, because I'm all about promoting women's and children's rights in Afghanistan, trying to save their lives. And I also volunteer with CHF, the Canadian Hunger Foundation, and go into schools. I'm a global educator, and go into schools and teach the children about the water issues and the potable drinking water in parts of Africa and around the world where they work, right? So I've been, kind of active in a lot of different groups, right? But the thing is it's just, we got to, worldwide, right? We need but I mean, we obviously aren't going to be able to do it worldwide. But I say to the United States government and to the Canadian government, like, how many children's lives are we prepared to lose? Just to our own governments. I'm up in Canada, but I'm also from the States, so I'm dual citizen, right? How many children are we prepared to lose? That's a sad reality, is that the government says, oh, well, it doesn't really matter if we lose, on average 5 children per night. No big deal. They're expendable. That's the message they're sending, right? I mean, you think about one of the last stats I saw out there. I'm sure it's changed by now, but one of the last stats that I saw was 105 billion with a B. I like to pronounce that because I don't want people to think I'm talking about a million with an M. 105 billion dollars is being spent annually in the United States because of child abuse. Because of child abuse. That's not to stop child abuse. They said that has nothing to do with prevention. That $105 billion is being spent annually because of child abuse. So I say, why not spend $500 billion and stop child abuse, right? And how are you going to do that? It's going to take generation after generation, but we're going to have to reach these young people and promote anti-violence stuff. And there's so many people out there who would say, well, that's just so corny. We like violence. We like to see all this violent stuff because you know what? That's the truth of it. People do. And that's why, they like to sit on Facebook and play Farmville and kill their children because their children are crying. Or they like to kill their children because they actually wet their pants. They like to beat their children half to death just because they were crying. Or duct tape their mouth, Or like my brother liked to sexually use me and abuse me, rape and sodomize me and sexually use me for nearly a year. Or like my mom bashing my head in, right? I'm just one survivor out here. My case is not special. These kids out here, we have to do something, and we have to speak up and speak out against what is wrong. So if you see a child being treated wrong, you make sure you get that child some help. You know what I mean? You do not allow that. That is wrong, and it shouldn't. And we need to stand up for what is right, right? And it's this very unpopular thing to do, I know, but it's necessary to save these kids' lives, right? Thanks everybody for being here. I had Chris here and Lone Star Twin, and I appreciate it because I love you guys so much. And I hope you have a great night. And I'll be back on tomorrow morning. I missed my show this morning, but I will be back on tomorrow morning for sure, for sure. I said I'll make sure I get my alarm. I actually turned my alarm off this morning, so sorry about that. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time, same place for One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. Take good care of yourselves. Look out for those kids out there. Have a good night.